For decades, the world has danced to the joyful sounds of ABBA. They weren't just a band, they were a global phenomenon, a sunbeam of pure pop joy that sold hundreds of millions of records. Their songs were the soundtrack to our lives, and their image was one of shimmering perfection, two beautiful, happy couples creating musical magic. It was a fairy tale set to a 4/4 beat, but behind the shimmering lights and catchy melodies lay a heartbreaking truth, something that's been whispered about for years. That pristine image of blissful harmony. It concealed a reality that was far more complex, painful, and just plain exhausting. For 40 years, the world has speculated on what really tore them apart, filling the silence with rumors of feuds and bitter rivalries. Now, looking back from the perspective of 78 years, Benny Andersson has been opening up, confirming what many of us have long suspected. In recent, startlingly candid interviews, the man behind the piano is breaking decades of careful silence. He reveals that the end of ABBA wasn't some sudden explosion. It was a quiet, fatal unraveling that tore their world apart from the inside out. It wasn't about a dramatic feud, but a slow, creeping exhaustion. A creative burnout fueled by immense personal turmoil that made it impossible to keep going. What he shared isn't a story of betrayal, but something far more human. And, in many ways, far more heartbreaking. This is the story of how the brightest light in pop music quietly and inevitably burned out. To understand the end, you have to go back to the beginning, before the world even knew their names. In the late 1960s, Björn Ulvaeus was a star in the popular folk group the Hootenanny Singers. Benny Andersson was the keyboardist for the Hep Stars, Sweden's answer to the Beatles. A chance meeting in 1966 sparked a songwriting partnership that felt like destiny. At the same time, two of Sweden's most beloved female vocalists were captivating the nation. Annie Frid Lyngstad, or Frida, was a jazz-influenced singer with a rich, versatile voice who'd won a national talent show. And then there was Agnetha Fältskog, a pop sensation in her own right. A gifted singer-songwriter who had already topped the Swedish charts with her own music before she was out of her teens. She was the ingenue with the crystal-clear soprano voice. Music brought Benny and Björn together, but it was love that formed the band. In 1969, Benny and Frida met and fell in love. That same year, Björn met Agnetha while filming a TV special. They were instantly smitten and married in 1971. The picture was complete. Two brilliant songwriters deeply in love with two extraordinary singers. It was a publicist's dream. Their first single together, People Need Love, was a modest hit in Sweden, but it was the first hint of the magic they could create. But their true launchpad came in 1974 on a glittering stage in Brighton, England. At the Eurovision Song Contest, a competition then dominated by earnest ballads, they unleashed Waterloo. It was an explosion of glam rock, pop perfection, and pure joy, complete with silver platform boots and a star-shaped guitar. The world had never seen anything like it. ABBA had arrived, and their global takeover had officially begun. That Eurovision victory wasn't just a win, it opened a floodgate. The years that followed saw ABBA reach a level of superstardom few artists ever experience. The hits were relentless. SOS, Mamma Mia, Fernando, Dancing Queen. Each song was a masterclass in pop, meticulously produced by Benny and Björn, with the soaring, layered harmonies of Agnetha and Frida. The ABBA sound was born, joyous, melancholic, and utterly irresistible. They dominated the charts from Tokyo to Toronto. They were on top of the world. But this relentless climb came at a huge human cost. Behind the smiles and the shimmering outfits, the foundation of their perfect world was starting to crack. The pressure was just unimaginable. The cycle was a constant, grueling loop. Write, record, promote, tour. Then do it all over again. There was no time to breathe, No time to process the dizzying speed of it all. We now know just how profoundly this pressure affected the members, particularly Agnetha. A self-described introvert, she was never comfortable with the chaos of fame. Her well-known fear of flying made touring a source of constant anxiety. But more than that, she was a mother. The guilt she felt being separated from her young children, Linda and Christian, was a heavy, persistent ache. She once said, "You always get back to bed conscious that she wants me and ABBA wants me, and it's very hard to do it all." Björn later called the experience of his daughter not recognizing her mother after a long tour a tough experience, and the public scrutiny never stopped. Because their brand was built on the image of two happy couples, their marriages weren't their own. They were public property. They were expected to be the joyful characters from their album covers 24/7, a performance that got harder and harder to maintain. On top of it all, Agnetha was often singled out and objectified by the press. They didn't just ask about her music. They asked about her body, reducing a sensitive artist to a sexy bottom, a label she never wanted and deeply resented. This is where Benny Andersson's recent reflections are so crucial. He's spoken about a growing creative and emotional exhaustion. That set in during these peak years. The demand to constantly produce upbeat, joyful music started to feel hollow as their private lives grew more strained. The ABBA machine had to keep running at full speed, even as the four people at its center were starting to break down. Benny described these years as having a kind of quiet sadness behind everything. They weren't fighting, they were just fading. The first public crack in ABBA's perfect facade came in 1979. Right at the peak of their global fame, Björn and Agnetha announced their divorce. For the public, it was a shock. It shattered the fairy tale everyone had bought into. For the band, it was a seismic event that would change their dynamic forever. The official story was that it was a happy divorce, two people amicably growing apart. But Agnetha later confessed she felt mangled by the split and needed counseling to cope. To make things worse, within a week of their separation, Björn had a new girlfriend. The hurt was deep, and yet the show had to go on. ABBA was a business, with commitments that couldn't be paused for a personal heartbreak. So the four of them were forced into an almost unimaginably difficult situation, working together in the intimate, emotionally charged space of a recording studio. Two of them were now exes, turning their shared history into music, while the world listened in, hungry for any hint of drama. This turmoil led to what is arguably the most emotionally raw song in their entire catalog, "The Winner Takes It All." Björn wrote the devastatingly honest lyrics about the end of a love affair, and then he had to ask his ex-wife to sing them. Agnetha said the experience was fantastic to do that song because I could put in such feeling, and you can hear that, feeling in every note. Her performance isn't just technical perfection, it's a confession, an outpouring of genuine, unfiltered pain. When she sings, "Tell me, does she kiss like I used to kiss you?" It's impossible not to hear a woman grappling with the ghost of her own marriage. Agnetha put it simply. Björn wrote it about us after the breakdown of our marriage. The fact he wrote it exactly when we divorced is touching, really. This song marked a profound shift. The innocent, sparkling pop of their early years began to fade, replaced by a more mature, melancholic, and deeply introspective sound. The fairy tale was over, and their art started to reflect that somber reality. Benny's recent statements have powerfully validated what fans have long felt about this period. He confirmed the pain in their later songs wasn't just artistic license. It was real. The studio, once a playground, had become a place where they processed their grief. The first crack had become a gaping fissure, just as the world was adjusting to the new ABBA, one married couple, two exes, the other pillar crumbled. In February 1981, Benny and Frida announced their divorce. The dream was officially dead. The group once defined by its loving partnerships was now just four individuals, linked only by their jobs. Like the first divorce, this one was presented as amicable. Frida said at the time, "We have chosen to be completely honest with each other." Breaking up became a necessity, but in truth, Frida was reportedly devastated. Benny had fallen in love with another woman, TV producer Mona Nurklit, and married her later that year. In his recent reflections, Benny has spoken about this period with an unusual vulnerability. He's admitted to an emotional disconnect in his marriage to Frida, expressing a quiet regret that he wasn't more emotionally present. He stresses that their end wasn't about bitterness, but a mutual recognition that something had simply run its course. This perspective adds a poignant, human layer to the story. With both couples now divorced, the atmosphere in the band became unbearable. The sessions for what would be their final studio album, 1981's The Visitors, were fraught with tension. Björn described them as frosty sometimes. Frida also noted they were all getting tired of working together. The joy, the easy friendship, the spark, it was all gone. All that was left were four colleagues trying to make music in a room thick with ghosts. This is the reality behind Benny's recent haunting confirmation. "We were exhausted," he admitted. "Marriages were falling apart. The music was starting to sound unnatural. We needed to stop to preserve ourselves." He described the end not as one big fight, but as a quiet, fatal unraveling. There was no final tour, no dramatic breakup announcement. They just stopped. Their final recordings are a testament to this emotional desolation. Songs from The Visitors, like One of Us, and When All Is Said and Done, are soaked in loss and resignation. Their very last recordings, The Day Before You Came and Under Attack, are masterpieces of melancholic pop, but they sound emotionally cold. They sound like an ending. The plan was a temporary break, but as Benny and Björn dove into writing their musical, Chess, the momentum to get ABBA back together just faded away. The break stretched into months, then years, then decades. After 1982, the four members of ABBA receded from the global stage. Agnetha and Frida released solo albums, while Benny and Björn found huge success with the musical Chess, and later, the global phenomenon that would become Mamma Mia. But for the fans, the story felt unfinished. The lack of a formal breakup left a void filled with decades of speculation. Were they enemies? Were there secret feuds? Why would the biggest band in the world just walk away? The world wanted a soap opera, but the truth was far quieter. This brings us to Benny Andersson, who, in his later years, has finally laid the rumors to rest. His candor has provided the closure fans have wanted for 40 years. He's patiently dismantled the myths, replacing them with a more painful but honest truth. He confirms that the core reason was sheer emotional and creative exhaustion. The machine had run out of fuel. He said the band's final years felt like uninspired workdays. He also confirmed that the divorces weren't just a backdrop, they were the story. The breakdown of their personal lives made the intense collaborative process of making music impossible. And yes, the crushing pressure of fame, particularly on Agnetha, created a strain that they just couldn't overcome. Most importantly, Benny has made it clear there was no single villain or betrayal. He describes the end as a natural conclusion, a respectful and necessary end to something that had become unsustainable. It was, in his words, an inevitable unraveling. Perhaps his most poignant revelation was calling the period after the breakup a time of creative death. That silence, after years of non-stop sound, was haunting for him. It powerfully conveys the deep personal toll the end of ABBA took. After decades of rumors, Benny has replaced tabloid drama with a human truth. Even though the band fell silent, their music never did. The 90s saw an incredible resurgence with the release of the compilation album ABBA Gold, which became a massive bestseller. Then came Mamma Mia, first a hit musical and then two blockbuster films, which cemented their songs as timeless classics woven into the cultural DNA of the planet. Their legacy is pop perfection, but their future is remarkable innovation. For years, the band famously turned down astronomical offers to reunite, including one widely rumored to be for $1 billion. Benny has been clear. "We will never appear on stage again. There is simply no motivation to do so. It's not who we are anymore." But then came an idea that changed everything. ABBA Voyage. Instead of a traditional reunion, they embraced the yay future. The groundbreaking London show features stunningly realistic digital avatars, or avatars, of the group in their 1970s prime, performing their greatest hits with a live band. It's a way to let the music live on without forcing the members back into roles they outgrew long ago. This project aligns perfectly with Benny's recent comments. He's deeply protective of their legacy and is only interested in projects that are genuinely meaningful. ABBA Voyage is exactly that, a bridge between the past and present, a celebration of the music without the personal cost of a real tour. It lets the world experience the joy of ABBA live, while allowing the four people who created it to keep the peace they fought so hard to find. The story of ABBA is a paradox. It's a story of breathtaking success and profound personal sacrifice. It's the story of music that brought boundless joy to millions, created by four people who were navigating immense private pain. Benny Andersson has finally given the world the true, unvarnished story. He's confirmed that ABBA didn't end with a bang, but with a slow, quiet fade, brought on by the very human toll of living an extraordinary life under an extraordinary spotlight. The glittering pop music we all fell in love with wasn't a lie, but it was forged in the very real fires of creative exhaustion and personal heartbreak. The silence that followed wasn't born of anger, but of the need to heal. And now, after 40 years, that silence has been filled with a quiet, heartbreaking, and definitive truth. What's your favorite ABBA song, and how has their music impacted your life? Let us know in the comments. And if you found this story fascinating, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into music history. Thanks for watching.